Hello, I'm Julia.
I'm Cole.
I'm Yonah.
And my name is Sadeen.
And this is the story of a French miracle. Now, as you may know, this story is a tale of Rose and Gavin, a French miracle. Now, this whole thing started on a snowy day in Paris. Supper time had just passed and hardly anyone was walking around. The frosted cobblestone streets were decked out for the holiday times. It was the week following All Saints' Day, and one popular family-owned bakery was still getting customers on this egregiously glacial winter's day. An amiable and pulchritudinous young woman called Rose was walking down Elmsworth Road to her mother's bakery. Her resplendent, snow-coated red hair fell in her long, slicked-back ponytail while she walked. When Rose arrived, she inhaled a large whiff of nutmeg and baked cinnamon brioche. These smells becoming stronger the closer she got to her bakery. She twisted the vintage black handle to the placid bakery, and as she entered, a gush of warm air rushed around her. She stomped her feet, shaking the snow off of her cold black boots onto the doormat labeled, "Happy Holidays." Rose walked into the kitchen to greet her terrific mother, who was concocting pain au chocolat. "Hello, Mother," she exclaimed blissfully. "Welcome home, Rose," her mother chirped. There was nothing Rose loved more than her bakery and her family. She had lived on the second floor of the bakery with her mother since the ripe age of 2. Rose's father had died when she was still young, leaving her once family of 3 to the bare minimum of 2 people left.
At the bakery, Rose walked around serving her customers. She recognized most of their customers, but as she walked over to one of the tables, she saw a man who looked about 22 years old, similar to her with tan skin, green eyes, and curly hair. She could tell he was sagacious, yet had a peaceful nature. She asked him, "Is this your first time coming here?" The man replied with a subtle yes, and told Rose he was participating in an exchange program from Italy and had just moved to France for his second semester of his junior year of college. Rose responded with, "That's interesting. Which college will you be attending?" He then replied, "I will be attending the Collège de l'École Culinaire." She was shocked by his response because that was in fact her own school. She then exclaimed, "That is my school as well." She wanted to talk more about it, however, a contumacious and surly customer complained that their bread had burnt their tongue. Rose was secretly annoyed and went to tend to this cause and catered to the other customers. As she was leaving, the man asked, "What's your name?" She replied, "Rose," and then turned around to bring the other customers food, as she didn't want to see her face turn the color of freshly harvested strawberries. As she brought their pastries and coffee, she scanned the room for the man but couldn't seem to find him as she realized she had never asked for his name. She cursed under her breath because it was her second year attending her fairly new college and she wanted to had met a new friend. Rose shook away the sadness and took the large mugs of eggnog out of her mother's hand to serve to their customers. She said, "Don't worry, Mom. You can go to bed and I'll finish serving the customers." As she brought the pastries and coffee to their customers, she scanned the room for the man but couldn't seem to find him as she realized she had never asked for his name. As she was closing the fat cafe, she noticed the paper where the man had been sitting with the words Gavin 012-345-6789. She smiled at the idea that she had made a new friend. She walked up the stairs of the bakery to her room, which was completely decked out with a Christmas tree and Christmas decoration. As she plopped down onto her bed, she fell right asleep. The next day was Monday, the first day of the second semester. She went to the school and walked to her first class of the day, La Classe de Pétrisserie. As she was walking into the building, she noticed a familiar face. As she pondered her mind, she remembered Gavin. She went and took the seat next to him. She greeted him with, "Hello, I recalled that I saw you at the bakery last time." He replied in an Italian accent, "Yes, your Rose correct." She nodded as the professor started to talk.
The following day, she woke up and got ready for school. All she could think about was Gavin. As Rose was brushing her teeth, getting dressed, and eating breakfast, all that was on her mind was the memory of her looking up as he gently placed the coat onto her. That day, as she walked into the building, she sat next to Gavin and took his coat off herself and told him, "Thank you for letting me borrow this." He replied, "No need to return it, you can keep it." She smiled as she put his coat back on. As to their procedure after their class, Rose took Gavin to see Louvre. As they went inside, you could not see through the fog-coated windows. As they explored the museum together, she showed him all the art and pointed out her favorites, especially the Mona Lisa. Rose loved to compare art and also loved baking. As they were two of her favorite things. As Gavin and her were admiring the art, she felt Gavin's warm hand wrap around hers. As they continued to appreciate the masterpieces, she felt her face become hot as she was overcome by a feeling of warmth. After they explored the museum, Gavin took Rose to an Italian restaurant. As they were walking back home, Rose noticed smoke around the corner. She sprinted across the streets to see a bakery flogged in flames. Nothing was left. No walls, no paintings, no baguettes. Rose immediately collapsed to the ground alongside her mom. Gavin sped up to Rose and hugged her as she was crying. Her mother collapsed on the ground, crying, cursing at herself for leaving the oven on. Rose felt her heart shatter into a million pieces at that exact moment. The only two things she has loved in life had been the bakery and her mother. Now one of those things were ashes on the ground. The salty tears rolled down her cheeks as she cried. She remembered all these historic memories she had at this bakery. The thousands of customers and memories were gone.
The next day at school, Rose was nowhere to be found. Gavin tried to text her, yet no response. After his classes, he researched her grandma's address. After he found it, he took a risk and drove down his broken-down Mini Cooper to her grandmother's house. 2 hours into the drive, his tires were slipping on the icy roads. He pulled off to the side to attempt to call a roadside company. However, he had no reception and couldn't reach any numbers. He did the only other thing he could think of and started walking along the roads to try to find some sort of shelter. His body temperature started noticeably dropping and he tried to keep himself warm, but it was no use. His eyelids felt heavy as he sat down to close his eyes. Meanwhile, Rose had finally taken her mom's phone to try to text Gavin. Her previous device has been in her room at the time of the incident. None of her texts got answered back. As the hours went by, Rose wondered if something had happened to Gavin. She decided to go out and drive along the route back to Paris, assuming he had been in an accident. About 45 minutes into her trying to find Gavin, she noticed something large by the side of the road, laying unconscious. She ran out of her car into the blizzard to check what it is. That's when it hit her. The person that was lying unconscious was Gavin. Rose picked up Gavin and put him in the passenger seat and drove him to the nearest hospital. As she was stressfully dreaming of a miracle, as Rose arrived, she screamed as loud as she could, "Help somebody!" A nurse came to Rose's assistance. The nurse, panicking, took Gavin into the emergency room. She waited outside of the room, peeking into a small window on the door to see if there's any progress. Hot tears streamed down her face as she prepared for the worst. The minute the doctors exited the door, Rose ran to them begging if she could see Gavin, and eventually they let her. She rushed to his side, and as she looked at him, wondering if he could come out alive, her vision became blurred as a stream of tears streamed down her face.
Eventually, she tried calling her mom to update her as to what had happened with Gavin. She informed her mom she'd be staying the night in the hospital. She fell asleep in the hospital chair by Gavin's side. As she woke up, she noticed a pair of emerald eyes slowly opening. She started screaming in hope, "Gavin, Gavin, can you hear me?" She waited for a reply until she got a slow nod. Rose was so overwhelmed with joy, she gave him a big bear hug while yelling, "Never do that again." In the following days during the blizzard, Gavin was not permitted by the doctors to go outside due to him recovering from hypothermia. So he stayed in Saint-Étienne with Rose and her family while he was convalescing. As the blizzard settled down, Gavin regained his health, and Rose and her family found a temporary apartment while their insurance covered the fixing of their bakery and house. Gavin and Rose made their relationship official as girlfriend and boyfriend, and they combined their savings to rent out a small apartment in Paris suburbs. The frosted cobblestone streets were decked out for the holiday times. It was the week following All Saints' Day, and one popular family-owned bakery was still getting customers on this egregiously cold winter's day.